There was a time when Mark Freeland, with a certain happy-go-lucky sense of delightful naivete, was, as in accordance with his general all-American sense of identity, bounded along with a very energetic and upbeat spirit, with a noble spirit of panache, elan, and adventure. He believed deeply in the Americana ethos writ large, and relished with delight his role contributive to the great American enterprise. Excuse me. But alas, this was all to change due to a rude awakening to the utter hypocrisy of certain officious and rogue elements ensconced in the fabric of society, which ilk were, in fact, totally alien to the finer virtues of which the American soul were comprised. Not only were these a priori eternal forces embedded in American culture, as such, not only devoid of possession of this underlying prerequisite to being an American, but being so, they had evinced to him that they had no capacity whatsoever to discern the degree to which this personage himself most exemplified, embodied, and epitomized the very quintessence of pure, distilled Americana. Thus, these de facto alien invaders, along with their hordes of barbarian subservients and lackeys, revealed the pernicious essence of their orientation when they acted to roughly abuse and humiliate this truest of true blue Americana. To add insult to injury, it was discovered, quite to the chagrin of this dyed-in-the-wool hombre, that these infectious ilk were not only already deeply entrenched in the warp and woof of American culture and society, but that they were a protected species bolstered by years of distortion via certain arms of propaganda, and a means of conferring on them a sacred cow status before the public eye, to which the general mass of citizenry, especially those sold out to becoming a part of the profit motive collective of the monstrously arbitrary machinery they had helped erect for those seedy purposes of exploitation. Thus, the entire populace had effectually become madly compromised by either directly or indifferently, which is to say tacitly, condoning this huge apostasy that this individual later, through diligent studies, was to conclude had been subverted for untold decades already, possibly since the virtual inception of the so-called republic, which now, in retrospect, seems to have been a secular disorder from the start. This quite served to disillusion this one-time patriot par excellence to the point that he had to admit to himself that the USA was based upon and perpetrated a fraud of astronomical dimensions. It was a purely abstract concept established on illusory foundations. There really was no accountability for the power mongers who manipulated the system in their special interest favor, except as one power bloc assiduously fought to undermine one such party incumbents for another. The USA and its sordid mercenary populations were nothing but greedy, conniving predators vying for control in what amounted to a gigantic casino-style bag. Further, this guy was appalled and revolted at the plenary lack of honor displayed by the tendencies of so-called American citizens to scratch and claw and cheat their way to the most selfish personal aggrandizement at the expense of their fellow men. Political strategists played the game of winning by hook or by crook. A gullible, apathetic mass either did not bother to vote or else just went along with the prescribed status quo, thinking to absolve or exempt themselves of responsibility for their government's actions, while demagogues tirelessly preached democracy ad nauseum in order to build consensus for this or that avaricious, money-mongering political group, using the most despicable means of catering to the lowest common denominator, or in deplorable attempts to win votes. All was farce, travesty, and fraud was the salient conclusion. The country was overrun with social parasites feeding off the host body politic. Work was demeaned and position was everything, whether through nepotism, cronyism, or whatever. It didn't matter. The quality of everything detonated in the face of this swamp of quantitative predation. Incentive was lost and de-incentivization politics were instituted to create a massive class of drones to be supported by the industry of others. A make-work scenario was created to employ multitudes to cater and funnel money to these derelict ilk through their social services galore. Everyone was in on the feeding frenzy with gluttonous glee, hordes of swine feeding at the public trough, dishonorable, shameless leeches sucking the vitality out of the host's body politic. Fait accompli, the damage is done. De facto insurgents now hold sway over public opinion and lives. Predatory minions pillage the public treasury, distort polity in their favor, and destroy virtually everything they touch. Forsooth, our city and country is under occupation by these enemy assailants.